The air hung thick and cold, a shroud of perpetual drizzle clinging to the late October afternoon of 1995. We, a quartet of adolescent scouts, myself, Liam, Mark, and Peter, embarked on what was meant to be our final patrol campout of the year, a desperate bid for end-of-season accolades. Our troop's designated campsite crowned a jagged, skeletal hill, a place where the wind whispered through gnarled trees even on calm days. A steady, relentless rain had been falling since dawn, promising no reprieve. Yet our parents, either absent for the weekend or firm believers in the character-building power of discomfort, had decreed the trip go on. Under dismal, green ponchos, we trudged up the treacherous, narrow paths, our limited gear feeling impossibly heavy. Every step was a battle against the slick mud and the encroaching gloom. All of us were wretched and on edge except for Peter. Peter, the youngest and smallest of our patrol, was one of those unfortunate souls thrust into scouting by a parent seeking free childcare. His primary mode of communication seemed to be annoyance, and we, in turn, had found a grim pleasure in tormenting him. He reveled in our frayed nerves, seeing it as an open invitation to further prod us that his current target was Liam. Liam, usually the epitome of a model scout, athletic, a straight-A student, and seemingly untouched by the usual teenage vices, found his only weakness in Peter, the joy he derived from tormenting. Peter was the singular crack in his otherwise pristine facade. I glanced back, catching the dangerous glint in his eyes, as Peter, like an eager, annoying pup, sidled up to him on the impossibly narrow path. "Hey, Liam," Peter chirped, his voice unnervingly high-pitched. Liam grunted. "What?" "I can read your mind," Peter declared. "Think of a number. I can guess it." "Okay," Liam said, his voice flat. "It's 30, Peter announced triumphantly. "No, you're just saying that. Really, I was right, wasn't I?" "Huh, wasn't I?" The rustling of ponchos told me Peter had begun to shove at Liam, a common tactic that could last for agonizing minutes. "Get away from me," Liam snapped. I didn't need to see it to know what followed. Liam, in a fit of irritation, pushed Peter away, trying to dislodge the clinging nuisance. The path, narrow and treacherous, proved to be Peter's undoing. He stumbled, a shrill scream tearing from his throat as he plummeted down the steep incline. He narrowly missed several trees, only to have his legs ensnared by a gnarled stump. The stump, cruelly positioned, was just uphill from a massive sandstone rock. Peter's head met the rock with a sickening, audible crack. I stared, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. Not a single twitch. Then, Mark's voice, a horrified whisper, pierced the silence. "Oh my God, it was the jolt we needed." "Let's go help him," Mark urged. "Yeah," I echoed, moving to descend the trail. Liam, however, remained rooted, blocking my path. He turned to Mark and me, his eyes wide with a frantic urgency. "We've got to tell people what happened, right?" he began, his voice strained. "We need to tell everyone that he slipped and fell. Got it? We've got to help Peter." Mark shouted, bewildered, "And we will." Liam insisted, his gaze locked on Mark. "But first, we need to be clear that we're going to tell everyone that he fell, right?" "You got me. That's what we tell everyone." "I don't know," I said, looking away. "I didn't see it happen." Liam nodded, seemingly satisfied with my response, and turned his intense stare back to Mark. "You pushed him." "We have to help him," Mark pleaded, his voice laced with confusion. I frantically nodded at Mark, silently urging him to comply, to say whatever Liam needed to hear so we could finally help Peter. "No," Mark said, his voice quiet but firm. Liam stared at him, a dangerous light entering his eyes. "All right," Liam said, a chilling calm in his voice. "Let's go." We walked quickly, a cautious pace born of fear, terrified of sharing Peter's fate. After a moment, Mark, perhaps, in a misguided attempt to console Liam, offered, "It wouldn't have done you much good anyway." Peter still would have told everyone you tried to kill him no matter what. Yeah, but that's Peter. Who'd have cared if the rest of us had our story straight? Liam retorted, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. He quickened his pace, closing the distance behind Mark. Which way do you think would be the fastest? Oh, hey. Mark's words were cut off by a yelp as Liam seized him, dragging him to the very edge of the path. Say it. Liam shrieked, his voice laced with a raw fear that overshadowed any intimidation. Say that you'll tell everyone that he slipped. He held Mark precariously close to the precipice, a chilling threat hanging in the air. Fuck you. Mark screamed, flailing wildly. His struggles, fueled by pure adrenaline, surprised me, eliciting a grunt of pain from Liam. Mark broke free. Then, with a surge of desperate strength, began pushing Liam towards the other side of the trail, towards a sheer cliff face. Jesus Christ, stop fighting! I yelled, my voice lost in the sudden savage struggle. I stepped closer, only to recoil. Their eyes held a terrifying, murderous intent. Mark's hand found Liam's chin, shoving his head back against the unforgiving rocks with all his might. Liam trembled then, a violent tremor like an old man. Gripped by a sudden palsy, as if a panic attack had seized him mid-fight. Still, he fought back. He grabbed Mark, lifting him like a tackling dummy, and charged forward blindly, Mark's poncho obscuring his vision. He misjudged the treacherous edge. Both Liam and Mark tumbled down the hillside, their descent punctuated by sickening thuds as they struck trees, before finally coming to rest on a flatter patch of ground. They were, by some twisted fortune, far more fortunate than Peter. I could see them stirring, hear their screams as their fall concluded. But neither made any attempt to rise. I picked my way down the trail as quickly and safely as I could, then circled back to where they lay dotted first. Both cried out for my help. But as I drew nearer, Liam abruptly fell silent. My legs broken. Mark gasped as soon as he saw me, his voice raw with pain. The bones sticking out. His poncho had ridden up, revealing the grotesque bulge in his lower left pant leg, beneath the knee, blood already soaking through the fabric and mingling with the rainwater. Hey, Liam said, his voice unnervingly flat, his complete lack of emotion, even as Mark screamed beside him, drew my gaze. I think I hurt my spine. I can't move my legs. I can't feel them. The way his body was twisted, it was entirely plausible. I couldn't comprehend his composure then, but in hindsight, it was surely shock, or a profound psychological denial. All right, guys, I'll go do what I can for Peter, and then I'll get help for everyone, I said, trying to infuse my voice. With a confidence I didn't feel. Mark shrieked, insisting I was wrong, that I should leave the park immediately to summon help. Despite all my first aid training, I was adrift, unsure of the correct course of action. A desperate hope clung to me that I could do something for Peter, whose injury had appeared the most severe. Perhaps clearing his airway if he'd vomited. I had to check on him. I tried to reassure them before I left. Mark cursed at my back as I ran towards where Peter lay, Liam remaining eerily silent. I ran to the spot where Peter's head had struck the rock, a place I knew intimately from countless hikes and camping trips. When I reached it, I froze. For long, agonizing minutes, I simply stood there. Peter was gone. No trace of him remained, save for a dark, wet pool of blood by the rock where his head had impacted, a stark crimson stain on the sandstone. I spun around, calling his name, running a short distance in every direction around the rock. Nothing, not a footprint in the mud, not another drop of blood, nothing. As I searched, a more profound horror began to creep in. Sounds began to fade. The drumming rain, once so insistent, became a distant whisper. My own footsteps in the shallow puddles vanished. Mark's screams, which had just moments before been so clear, were gone. My own voice, when I tried to speak, sounded muffled, as if filtered through cotton. I had known fear before, but never this creeping, suffocating silence. Then, a sensation. Not the prickling feeling of being watched, but the crushing awareness of something terrible standing directly over me. I spun around, of course, to an empty space. But the feeling intensified, growing stronger, heavier. The silence deepened, absolute. I could no longer hear my own breathing, nor the frantic beat of my heart. I ran. Ran back to where I'd left Liam and Mark, faster than I'd ever run in my life. Slowly, agonizingly, sounds returned. Mark's pained screams, his curses directed at Liam, drifted back into my awareness. Liam merely shifted his head, his wide eyes fixed on me as I arrived. Mark's screams abruptly ceased when I told them of Peter's disappearance. How was all he could manage? The oppressive presence, faint but undeniable, descended upon me again. I don't know. Mark, how are your arms? Can I carry you out of here packstrap style? I had 2 years and 18 inches on him, so I knew I could manage. Mark assented. Whatever dreadful presence I felt, he seemed to sense it too, overriding his pain, and he readily agreed to be carried out of the park, no matter how excruciating it might be. I quickly retrieved my first aid kit, dropped my pack, and hastily fashioned a splint for him. He screamed as I hoisted him onto my back. Wait, what about me? Liam's voice, suddenly filled with a raw, desperate emotion, made me glance over. His eyes were wide, his face paling. I can only carry one person. We'll get you help. As fast as we can. But what if whatever made Peter disappear? Looking back, I find it difficult to fault Liam. He was just a kid. He'd made a mistake, intending little or no real harm. Certainly less than the constant torment we'd all inflicted on Peter. He had seen his entire life, his accomplishments, his future, all threatened by an accident involving someone we all considered dirt. He overreacted, as many of us would have at that age, with so little life experience or perspective. But at the time, I just glared at him, twisted and helpless on the ground, reaching up to me. Maybe you deserve it, I told him. I turned my back, carrying Mark out of the park. Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt Peter. I wasn't going to drop Mark. I was bluffing. I'm sorry. I'll do anything you want if you get me out of here. I'll give you everything. Please, don't leave me alone. What was that? There's something out here. Come back, please. I swear that I'll do anything. Please, please. Come back. His desperate pleas faded quickly, replaced by the relentless sound of the rain and Mark's agonizing moans. As I walked, the chilling presence also receded. Nearly a mile lay ahead in the downpour before we reached the nearest house with a phone. Mark groaned and winced with every step, making our progress slow and frustrating. After a few hundred yards, I slipped, landing heavily on my left knee. Mark shrieked in my ear as his upper chest collided with my shoulder. I think I broke a rib back there. You can't carry me like this. I couldn't fathom how he could have broken a rib and only just now felt it, but I wasn't about to argue. As carefully as my anxiety allowed, I lowered him to a sitting position and switched to a firefighter's carry, hoisting him mostly over my shoulder. Is that better? I asked when he was back up. He winced again, but conceded. It still hurts, but it's better. We rounded a bend in the trail, approaching a gentle slope where the parking lot lay. I thought of it then as the end of the forest. Mark felt easier to carry now, and I believed we would make it out. The familiarity of the path, despite the heavy, pain-racked weight on my back, began to reassert a sense of normalcy. Whatever chilling sensation I'd felt where Peter had vanished was fading. Things felt so normal, in fact, that the idea of Peter simply getting up and walking away, that emergency services would soon find him, became a believable fantasy. I felt then that all I had to do was carry Mark, and the rest would be up to the adults. Oh Jesus, Mark suddenly whispered, a chilling stillness in his voice. Run, run, fucking run. Before I could ask, before I could turn to see what he was fleeing from, he struck me as hard as he could on the side. Again and again. Even as I began to run, he hammered at me. It was a struggle to take even a few steps with such a heavy, awkward burden. But it became easier when I noticed something terrifyingly familiar. Mark's voice began to recede, even as his thrashing. And screeching grew more shrill on my back. He might have tried to describe what he saw, but within seconds, he was as muted as my own silent footsteps in the puddles. I reached the bottom of the incline. Mark was convulsing now, a terrifying indication that whatever I was trying to escape was drawing closer. He still struck at my side, but his blows were weaker, more erratic. The path up the hill was a treacherous expanse of loose rocks and gravel. In this weather, a solid foothold was impossible, yet by some miracle, I scrambled up it, maintaining my grip on him even as he seemed to fight against me, even as I trembled uncontrollably. I thought I faintly heard something then, a faint splash. A good sign, I desperately hoped. Halfway up the hill, a horrible sensation washed over my feet, numbness. I couldn't understand why. Even with all the momentum I'd built, my feet landed awkwardly, as if on ice, yet I remained upright. I barely had time to register pain in my ankles before they too went numb. I stumbled forward, the numbness climbing swiftly to my knees. My legs became useless. I fell, practically face first. Mark, despite his fractures, somehow broke free, flipped over, and began to crawl frantically up the hill. I tried to follow, feeling the numbness reach my ribcage, dragging myself across. The rocks. I remember, with perfect clarity, the sight of Mark, twitching and trembling, as he clawed his way forward. Then a force slammed into the back of my head. A crushing blow like a construction beam dropped from a crane. My face was driven into the ground, rocks tearing into my cheeks, breaking the skin. All fight, all flight, left me. I lay there, a breathing corpse, devoid of energy, hope, or understanding. I lacked even the courage to lift my hood, to see what horrors surrounded me. I don't know how long I lay there. The numbness eventually receded, but still, I didn't lift my hood. So little light permeated the hood that night might have fallen. Without my knowing. A long, long time later, the rain finally ceased, and long after that, sounds began to return. Birds chirped, cars hummed in the distance, miles away. I didn't move. After an eternity of only natural sounds, footsteps approached. They stopped abruptly, then transformed into the frantic rhythm of someone running towards me. "Are you all right?" An old man, whose name I can't recall, asked as he leaned over and pulled back my hood. He winced, seeing the rocks still embedded. In my face, "Christ, kid, what happened to you?" "I don't know," I said. "I still don't know. I don't want to know." Liam, Peter, and Mark were never found. No trace of them, no clue as to what made them vanish, was ever discovered. I learned even that much reluctantly. Seek answers? Hell, I refuse to even approach a forest anymore. But staying away from forests isn't enough. I have developed an insatiable need for sound, always. A minute of silence sends a jolt of anxiety through me. Sleeping without it is impossible. If whatever took my friends comes for me, I want every warning I can get, which brings me to why. I'm sharing this now. Lately, even with music blaring at full volume, even with me screaming until my lungs ache, I've been experiencing minutes of suffocating silence. At home, at work, in my car, visiting friends, it follows me. Many years have passed since that last horrific campout, but it feels as though that presence is drawing near once more. When it truly desires, I believe it will bestow upon me a silence that will never, ever end.